Exposed. Amazing undercover FBI agents fight against racism, transforming lives forever. You won't believe what happens next. Jenna wiped down the counter, the rag clinging to her palm like a second skin. The rain poured outside, tapping rhythmically against the diner windows, a stark contrast to the charged conversation swirling around her. She delivered another slice of pie with a mechanical smile, her attention caught by the murmurs rising from a table near the back. Words like outsiders and don't belong sliced through her, leaving her stomach twisted in knots. The town she loved was becoming unrecognizable, and for one fleeting moment, she could almost hear the echoes of her late father urging her to keep her family safe. Her fingers trembled as she recollected previous evenings filled with laughter, familial warmth, and a community that felt like home. Now, the nostalgic crescendo was crumbling, leaving dissonance and fear in its wake. Would tensions escalate further? Would her mother's health, already frayed, suffer more as unchecked anger festered among their neighbors? Each shift at the diner became harder as the weight of unease increased, not for herself, but for her siblings who needed their mother, and a sister who might have to shield vulnerable eyes from the hate brewing around them. What if, she thought, those who shared late-night drinks and conversations around the bar turned out to be the ones fueled by this hatred? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She exhaled, the momentary reprieve lighting her thoughts before crashing back to the darkness. The cashier, old Tom, had dilated the conversation. What he said echoed in her mind with painful clarity. Friends she'd known her whole life were standing on one side, possibly breeding something she couldn't support. How could she betray them? Yet, could she hold on to relationships that threatened the very fabric of her values? So much feeling grappled for attention. Fear coiled tightly in her chest. The thought of her older friends laughing and bonding over the shared history made her fingers twitch, but now they seemed grotesque in its new light. How could she navigate the tumultuous waters of their long-established loyalty, now tainted by prejudice? Her loyalties stretched thin, like threads destined to snap. With every offer of kindness from Mike, the undercover agent she'd grown to trust, the internal dissonance surged. She confided in him her fears, drawn towards his understanding, but nagging doubts hiccuped in harmony with the thrill of acceptance. With her psyche teetering between moral codes and familiar faces, Jenna faced the inevitable. As she stood frozen amidst her patrons, whether to silence her discomfort or finally take a stand, chaos buzzed in the air like static before a storm. A community meeting loomed ahead, an inflection point where the tension would explode, and she stood at the precipice of an impossible choice, her heart thudding against her ribcage. Jenna inhaled deeply, a veil of security wavering just above her, ready to collapse under the pressure of revelation and indecision. Would she find courage, or would she shrink back into comforting shadows, leaving others to suffer in silence? With each moment stretching like a rubber band, she could feel everything she cared for hanging precariously on her next words, preparing her for a confrontation that might forever alter her world. Jenna's heart raced as she clocked out of her shift, the clamor of the diner fading into the background as she stepped into the cool night air. The rain had lightened to a drizzle, but the heaviness of her thoughts threatened to drown her. Navigating the emotional turbulence from her encounter with Tom and the whispers of animosity at the diner left her disoriented. Shouldn't the town she cherished feel safe? Each familiar face had now become a source of anxiety, looming specters whispering doubts into her mind. How deeply rooted was this hatred that they would impose on her and others merely for being different? Shaking off the chill air that wrapped around her tightly, she started to walk home, the rhythm of her feet echoing her internal conflict. Replaying Tom's words twisted her stomach further. They had shared meals, laughter, and stories, but did that bond mean anything when hatred lurked just beneath the surface? Their friendship had always felt like an unbreakable tether, but now it hung by a thread and Jenna felt its fraying. Could she risk losing lifelong friendships in the name of her principles? Walking past the community center, she quickened her pace. The meeting was slated for the following evening, an event that could either reinforce her worst fears or lead to transformative dialogues among her neighbors. But could she truly voice her discomfort when it put her directly in opposition to those closest to her? As she turned the corner, the rustling leaves occasionally shattered by car tires pressed her to think of Mike again. He had offered not just information about the ongoing situation, but a promise of something better: compassion amidst chaos. His presence was a light in her isolation, yet she feared letting him down if she faltered. What would that imply for her own strength? She arrived home, the scent of her mother's cooking wafting through the air. It felt comforting and familiar, an anchor in the storm of her emotions. But even this warmth was tempered by the gnawing concern. After dinner, she sought refuge in her room. She leaned against the wall, grappling with her thoughts, that juxtaposition of fear and resolve entering a dance of contradiction. With the meeting looming, she resisted the impulse to retreat into the background. Instead, she posited a different question. Who might she become if she acknowledged her voice? What if she could channel the dissonance into purpose? The hunger for clarity ignited a flicker of determination within her, and together with the fear, it infused her with an unshakable desire not to remain silent. Jenna found herself pouring her thoughts onto paper. Each sentence became a tentative outline for her speech. Moments of confusion morphed into potential strategies to articulate her feelings. It was a revealing process, unraveling the tangled knots of doubt, transforming them into cohesive thoughts. Each word etched deeper into her resolve, building a confidence she hadn't known she possessed. As she closed her notebook, a sense of clarity washed over her. The path ahead remained murky, but she now had a willingness to navigate it. Tomorrow night's meeting could either be her greatest challenge or the moment she found her footing. As dawn began to break over the horizon, Jenna stood before the mirror, searching for the strength she needed. There it was, not just in her reflection, but within her burgeoning resolve. The time had come to face those she had shared her life with, to confront her fears and stand firm in her beliefs. What transformation would await her at the community meeting, where true confrontations blurred the line between friend and foe? Jenna awoke with an unexpected surge of determination coursing through her veins. The sunlight flickered through the partially drawn curtains, illuminating the room with gentle warmth. Moments before, she had been lost in a tangle of dreams that felt all too real. Faces from her past intertwined with swirling emotions, each echo amplified by the impending meeting. With a purpose she hadn't yet fully embraced, Jenna moved through her morning routine with heightened awareness. She dressed thoughtfully, choosing a simple but professional outfit that reflected the gravitas of what lay ahead. As she selected a blouse and pencil skirt, she felt a yearning to project strength, to embody the qualities she was beginning to acknowledge within herself. Standing before the mirror, she practiced the words she had written so fervently the night before. At first her voice wavered, but each repetition layered confidence over uncertainty. The words flowed more easily, as if they were shedding the weight of fear tied to them. She could see herself framed in the moment, her courage inching toward the surface. Once dressed, Jenna hesitated as she reached for her notebook. The morning sun illuminated the pages filled with her thoughts and arguments. The words had begun as a whisper of hope, but now carried a weight of purpose. She needed to remember that fear was a choice just as speaking out was an act of empowerment. She grabbed a quick breakfast, her mind racing with strategies. Would she approach the meeting as a friend, seeking understanding, or as an activist, demanding change? Each scenario unfolded the complexity of her emotions, her core values in contention with the fear of alienation from those she had grown up with. As midday approached, she found herself distracted by snippets of conversation at the diner, where she had virtually fled her thoughts the night before. Each friendly greeting felt like a brimming pitfall of judgment. She noticed how her colleagues exchanged glances. Some whispers stubbornly held meaning only they could decipher. Gathering courage, she acknowledged to herself that she couldn't hide forever. Jenna's thoughts turned back to Mike. He was emblematic of the change she wanted to embrace. His unwavering support had illuminated possibilities within her that she hadn't considered. Unconsciously, she idolized his fearlessness, his ability to challenge the status quo while remaining grounded. That afternoon, as the time drew near, Jenna felt an almost magnetic pull toward the community building. She arrived early, heart pounding, and watched as faces from her past filed in, their greetings echoing like old stories. The air was thick with anticipation. She focused her gaze on the entrance, waiting for that familiar figure. When Mike walked through the door, a fleeting calm enveloped her. Their eyes met, and in that split second, she felt emboldened, a reminder that she didn't have to brave the storm alone. As the meeting commenced and voices filled the room, a knot settled in her chest. She could feel the tension rise with each familiar voice sounding out concerns that, while valid, lacked the depth of understanding she was growing to seek. The urge to contribute swelled within her, an internal drumbeat urging her to rise. When the facilitator opened the floor for discussion, Jenna inhaled deeply, her heart racing in synchrony with her thoughts. Would she find her voice amid the cacophony, or fold into anonymity once more? Everyone would hear her, and the thought danced between excitement and terror. This is the moment, she whispered to herself, just above the murmurs in the room. How would Jenna navigate this complex blend of friendship and fear in the moments to come? The weight of her choice loomed larger than the room itself, a precipice she had to define on her terms. Would she leap or linger in the safety of silence? The room pulsed with conversation, a cacophony of familiar voices yet strangely foreign to her. Jenna's heart raced. She could feel the weight of their presence, people who had once been her peers, friends, even family. But their familiarity clashed against the new identity she felt forging within her. She closed her eyes, her breath steadying as she visualized the words that had, for too long, remained trapped behind her lips. Just breathe, she reminded herself, and opened her eyes once more to survey the room. It felt like both a sanctuary of safety and a stage lit brightly for all to see. Mike's gaze remained a touchstone in that sea of chaos, anchoring her amidst the storm of conflicting thoughts. The discussion rolled on, words tumbling over one another, often missing clarity and depth. Each voice that rose contributed to the undercurrent of tension in the room. Jenna felt the chasm between those sentiments and her own emerging convictions widen. The disparity gnawed at her. It became increasingly evident that many were hesitant to wholeheartedly embrace change, stuck in the comfort of inertia. With every passing moment, Jenna felt herself being pulled more into the vortex of the self-doubt that had held her back for so long. Yet another part of her, a bold flicker of defiance, pushed back against those shadows. I have to say something. If not now, then when? The urgency intensified, a siren call illuminating a path forward amidst the disarray. As the facilitator paused to invite new contributions, Jenna took another deep breath. Her voice, quivering initially, found a steadiness in that pregnant pause. I think we need to talk about what these conversations truly mean for us, she began, the room turning towards her like a flower reaching for the sun. To her surprise, a flood of emotion swept over her, a mixture of fear and exhilaration intertwined. It's not just about addressing the problems within our community, but confronting the very principles that govern our lives. Her tone darkened as she navigated her thoughts. We have to dig deeper than surface-level concerns. We should be asking ourselves why we allow certain patterns to persist. The murmurs among her peers intensified. Eyes darted left and right, some widening in surprise. Yet, Jenna pressed on, fueled by a newfound conviction. What about accountability? Are we genuinely willing to hold ourselves responsible for the status quo? Or are we content to simply voice our discomfort and move on? At her last assertion, she noted a shift in the atmosphere, a ripple of uncertainty brewing among the crowd. Some nodded, seemingly appreciative, while others frowned, their discomfort palpable. But that discomfort turned into energy, not hostile, but charged with the unease of self-examination. In that critical juncture, Jenna made a revelation. Every nod of dissent or agreement represented a sliver of a choice, each person weighing their commitment to becoming the change they desired to see. And in this moment of vulnerability, she recognized her own fear as a barrier that could either limit her growth or serve as a catalyst for transformation. And then, a voice broke through the haze of her thoughts. It was a familiar one. "What are you really asking us, Jenna?" Mike's question sliced through the tension with precision, placing her on the precipice of her own desires in front of the group. Jenna met his eyes, and the world around her blurred. He had confronted her directly, an invitation wrapped in challenge. "I'm asking us to confront the uncomfortable truths we've been avoiding," she declared, feeling emboldened by the visibility of this moment. What lay ahead intuited the possibility of not just acceptance but active transformation. The room, now silent with heightened anticipation, awaited her next move, as did Jenna. Yet she understood that her journey had only just begun. The complexities of their intertwining histories weighed thick in the air. Jenna's heart beat wildly, knowing she had a choice: to either clarify her intent and advance the discussion, or retreat back into the shadows. She felt the earthquake of uncertainty grip her as she gazed out at those faces, from friends to potential foes, and realized her next words would carve a new path for herself and those around her. The moment was unfolding, demanding her clarity. Would she seize control of the narrative or step back into silence? There it hung, the undeniable pivotal point of change, and what would happen if I pushed them further, loomed in Jenna's mind as she prepared to deepen the dialogue. The silence hung heavily, punctuated only by the sound of Jenna's breath. It felt almost electric, each heartbeat a drum roll before what could be her debut. The choice loomed, and she sensed the weight of not just her words, but the potential consequences attached to them. If she pressed too hard, would she find allies or ignite defenses? Her earlier questions tumbled through her mind, fueling an inner resolve that pushed her onward. "Do we truly want to keep our heads buried in the sand?" she asked, a slight tremor swelling in her voice but firming it as she continued. "Or is it time we held accountable not just ourselves but one another?" The room remained still, the air thick with anticipation, tension morphing into a palpable presence. Jenna saw expressions shift, the mirror of her own inner turmoil reflected back at her, uncertainty playing behind familiar eyes. It was as if her words had stripped them bare, revealing insecurities and hidden fears. But rather than cower, Jenna felt herself rising, fueled by a newfound purpose. "Change doesn't happen in silence," she asserted, feeling the crackle of adrenaline coursing through her veins. "It happens through uncomfortable conversations, through confronting the truths we are too afraid to face." She locked eyes with Mike, who nodded, a small but significant gesture of support. In his affirmation, Jenna sensed a rallying behind her, encouragement, but also implicit expectation. This was the moment she had both craved and dreaded, a chance to instigate a discussion that could elevate them all from passive observers to active participants in their lives. Choosing not to engage is a choice in itself, she continued, now emboldened. A choice to uphold a status quo that keeps us stagnant. But I don't just want us to notice the issues, I want us to transform them. The room began to murmur softly. Questions blossomed in the air, an undercurrent of curiosity mingling with trepidation. Faces once familiar now portrayed a collage of expressions: fear, contemplation, and in some, an unexpected glimmer of hope. She saw it clearly. The change she sought was not just for herself, but for each of them. "Imagine," she dared, "if we spent less time shielding ourselves from discomfort and more time discussing this discomfort openly. How much could we grow together?" Timid but resolute hands began to rise. Jenna felt a rush of incredulity. People were preparing to speak. A surge of energy filled the room. She had ignited a spark, and with it came an awareness that perhaps, just perhaps, her clarity could pave the way forward. Mike broke the silence. "Jenna, I see where you're going with this, but are we really ready to challenge each other? Because that's not just a conversation, it's a commitment." His voice was steady, yet full of inquiry. "Isn't that what we need?" Jenna countered, her fervor unquenchable. "We have to build a culture of accountability. If we want our community to thrive, we need to push through the discomfort." Jenna's heart drummed loudly in her chest, the gravity of her statements landing with the weight of truth. She could virtually feel the tension morph into something constructive, a tangible yearning for a dialogue that could shape their future. Yet as she relished the transformation of the dynamics, a flicker of doubt seeped into her thoughts. What if, despite this movement, some voices remained too afraid to grapple with the issues at hand? Are we prepared to face our own failures? She pressed on, a challenge cloaked in vulnerability. To acknowledge the biases that run deep within us? Doubt rippled through the audience, a collective pause that made her think she had overstepped. Would they retreat from confrontation? But then, she spotted the fire in the eyes of a few, the resolve mirrored in their expressions. Let's lay it out on the table. If we truly want to reshape our lives, we have to confront the things we fear the most. In that moment, something shifted. The room, once defined by hesitation, teetered on the cusp of releasing a torrent of conversation simmering beneath the surface. Jenna grasped the potential of this moment, feeling invigorated as a new resolve blossomed within her. Then let's do it, let's engage, she urged, her voice resolute, carrying the promise of accountability and authenticity. It starts right here, right now. But as excitement ignited and words began to flow, a shadow crept into her mind, one she couldn't shake. What heavy truths might come to light? Was she prepared for the fallout? As faces began to shift from curiosity to courage, Jenna braced herself for the dialogue that would redefine not just her relationships but her very identity. Would she emerge as a catalyst for change, or would the price of vulnerability leave her standing alone in an unknown landscape? The air thickened again with tension. The conversation was unfolding, but the stakes had never felt higher. Would she grasp the opportunity to deepen this discussion, or would the emotional turmoil pull her back into the shadows? What awaited them all as they barreled toward the truths they'd long evaded? Jenna inhaled deeply, ready to navigate the turbulent waters of candid discussion. She sensed the air shift with the stirrings of vulnerability. It was intoxicating. Yet, an incessant whisper in her mind cautioned her. This was uncharted territory. As the first brave soul began to speak, her heart raced. Words flowed honest and raw, and she fought to keep her composure while absorbing each revelation. Maybe we've let our fears control us, a woman named Lisa suggested, her voice steady despite the weight of her admission. I felt invisible, like my challenges don't matter enough to be acknowledged. I'm tired of pretending it's okay. The boldness in Lisa's voice reverberated against the walls, but Jenna felt her own doubts echoing back. What right did she have to ignite this fire? The responsibility that came with their shared confessions loomed large. Would she choke on these new truths? Why should we hide? Jenna interjected, striving to redirect the focus. Every narrative here is vital. We have to own our stories, however messy they might be. Encouraged by Jenna's support, others began to reveal their own complicity in maintaining silence. Mike raised his hand and spoke with a blend of authority and uncertainty. Admitting our biases feels like admitting failure, but if we don't confront them, how do we grow? His genuine struggle mirrored Jenna's. The intersection of disappointment and determination shone through. Watching the dialogue unfold, Jenna realized how swiftly she had positioned herself as a leader, guiding others toward a reckoning she had once feared. But the weight of leadership felt heavy as each person's truth collided with her own. Her restlessness intensified. The very bravery she admired in them now screamed to be reciprocated. She needed to confront her narrative too. Mike, you're right, Jenna said, a decision blossoming within her. I've held on to my fears for too long as well. Fear of rejection, of being called out for what I believe to be a flaw. I'm scared that if I embrace this vulnerability, I will lose everything. The admission hung in the air and she felt the room pause, cheeks burning with the rawness of her honesty. Each unspoken word wrapped them tighter within a shared circle, a chamber of souls willing to peel back the layers they had clung to. Jenna's throat tightened as she pondered the irony of seeking liberation through vulnerability, while feeling so shackled by it. Imagine, she echoed Lisa's earlier sentiment, if we began to approach these conversations with curiosity instead of defensiveness. How might that transform our perceptions of each other? A chorus of responses flowed, dialogue thrumming with newfound energy. Excitement surged within her. Jenna's vision was no longer obscured by doubt. She could see a path forward, not just for herself, but as an intertwining of their journeys. Each shared experience deepened their bond while simultaneously illuminating personal shadows. But as the conversation escalated into a vibrant exchange of struggles and aspirations, Jenna could not ignore the nagging questions still forming at the corner of her consciousness. What if this discussion bore consequences she hadn't anticipated? What if deeper issues were unearthed, issues she was unprepared to handle? Suddenly, a harsh voice broke through the vibrant tapestry of solidarity. It was Dan, a frequent doubter of change. "You think all this talk will mean anything? You're just wasting time. Change takes action, not words." His skepticism reverberated through the room, a potent reminder of resistance lingering just below the surface. Jenna's heart raced once more. This was the challenge she knew would come, the question that could either bolster her resolve or send her spiraling. Was she really equipped for this? Could she engage in confrontation not only with Dan but with her own lingering anxieties? Clenching her fists, Jenna and the entire group now sat at the precipice of a confrontation that could test their newly defined values. She felt both fear and exhilaration thrumming through her, the stakes now razor-sharp. The opportunity for real transformation loomed, but with it came the responsibility for action. Determined, Jenna focused on Dan, feeling a surge of defiance. "And what are you doing to be part of the solution?" As the word slipped from her mouth, Jenna felt an unsettling mix of excitement and dread. Would this encounter provoke more doubt or catalyze understanding? Could she bridge the divide that Dan represented? Or would this discourse reveal just how fragile their new commitment to change could be? The room held its breath, waiting for the response that could either ignite a fire or fracture the fragile alliance they had begun to forge. Jenna's pulse quickened as Dan's smirk broadened, the definition of skepticism embodied. It was a charged moment, a collision of their worlds. She could feel the energy in the room prickling like static electricity, waiting for a spark. Would her words land with impact, or would they fizzle out swallowed by doubt? What does that even mean? Dan's voice cut through the tension, mocking her challenge. "What are any of you willing to do instead of yammering about your fears? Talk doesn't change the world." A knot twisted in Jenna's stomach. She sensed the tension shift, a simmering interrogation looming not just for Dan but against herself. "What are you doing?" she had asked. Maybe he was right. Wasn't it easy to hide behind words to create a narrative washed clean of uncomfortable truths? Yet, as doubts clawed at her insides, Jenna clung to the fragile thread of courage. "We're starting. That's more than what many do," she shot back, her voice steadier than she felt. "We've put words to our fears, and that's the first step. Change begins here." Jenna locked eyes with Dan, searching for a crack in his armor. She could see the corners of his mouth twitch, not in agreement, but irritation. But it wasn't just Dan. It was the whole room. She realized the task was far greater than she had anticipated. Dialogues often fizzled in vulnerable spaces, and she could almost envision their collective struggle collapsing beneath the weight of cynicism. "Are we just going to sit here and say our rehearsed lines?" Dan leaned forward, leaning into his antagonism. "There's a world outside where things are broken, and you all are just talking. The real work is where the rubber meets the road. How do you plan to move beyond this?" Silence fell heavy over Jenna's shoulders, and she felt her vision narrow. The pressure was rising, a thick fog of responsibility rolling in. Suddenly, the lens shifted. It wasn't just Dan, but her own fears, nipping at the edges of her resolve. Deep inside, a voice urged her to shut down, back away. But another part of her, a braver part, insisted, "No more hiding." "Maybe we start by being willing to confront ourselves," she replied, her voice surprising even her with its strength. "Each of us carries biases, and by doing this sharing, we make ourselves accountable. It's not just about talking. It's about the first step in action." For a fraction of a second, Dan's expression faltered. Maybe it was a hint of respect or just irritation. She couldn't tell. But Jenna sensed the room's collective inhalation, a shift as the group began to lean in rather than fold away. Lisa raised her hand again, her voice a beacon of shared resolve. We have stories that matter. We come from places that many can't see. If we are committed to understanding one another, it's not only about our actions, but how we share and confront our past. Right now we're shedding light, and that's invaluable. And the tide was turning. Jenna's heart swelled, the group finding common ground in the shared act of seeking understanding. Yet the haunting nebula of Dan's skepticism loomed over them, lingering like dark clouds threatening a storm. The gravity of his comments began to circle back in her mind, reminding her of the stakes. Fear trickled down her spine once more. What if our dialogues don't translate into action? What happens when the discussions fade and we're left with our unresolved truths? The vulnerability tugged hard at her resolve, threading her internal conflict with a growing urgency to forge an actionable next step. Before she could spiral deeper into her thoughts, Dan interjected, "You all preach about vulnerability, but where's your plan? You can't just talk about fear. What happens when you need to face the real obstacles outside this room?" The question hung audaciously, echoing through Jenna's psyche. It was a challenge wrapped in tension, demanding a decisive answer to not just prove Dan wrong, but to silence her inner critic. Determined now, Jenna took a breath, her voice steady and fierce against the tide of uncertainty. "We bring our stories to the forefront. We create initiatives that matter, based on these conversations. We hold one another accountable. It's not just about words, it's a lifestyle shift, one dialogue at a time." The room exploded. Ideas erupted, voices rising to meet her call. But in the back of her mind lingered an unsettling truth. The path she envisioned required more than just courage and connection. It required strategy, commitment, and most crucially, the ability to navigate the friction that Dan represented, not just outwardly, but within herself. As she soaked in the excitement generated by her bravery, a new question emerged, sharper and more daunting. Could she lead them not just through conversations, but through the actions they would need to take beyond this room? The excitement of the group stirred something in Jenna. She felt the urge to muster their emotional energy towards a plan that would ignite real change. But could she transform this surge into tangible action before the weight of Dan's challenge pulled them all back into the shadows once again? Jenna felt like she was riding a wave, but the foam at the crest was beginning to froth, threatening to tumble her into the chaos beneath. As the group around her buzzed with new ideas, a fire lit within her, a calling not just to speak, but to act. Yet a shadow flickered at the edges of her determination. She knew that stimulation without direction could lead to disappointment. She had ignited their enthusiasm, but that ignition had to be leveraged, pushed into a framework that could sustain momentum. Each voice had to be heard, distilling the noisy clamor into actionable steps. Jenna realized that to lead effectively, she needed more than a passionate speech. She required a structured facilitation that could channel the energy swirling in the room into targeted action. "All right, let's refocus," she said, a practiced calm settling over her as she positioned herself to be a unifying thread. "We have the drive. Now we need a strategy. Let's break it down. What specific actions can we take that apply our insights to real-world issues?" Heads nodded. The collective energy, while still exuberant, was tethering itself to her call for clarity. It was a remarkable shift, one she hadn't anticipated would happen so swiftly. Each contribution sharpened in purpose. Dan's initial skepticism began to echo in the ideas rising around her, not as doubt, but as a challenge to formulate a true plan of action. "What about community outreach?" Lisa suggested. "We have stories that can resonate with others who've faced similar struggles. We can partner with local organizations to share our experiences and resources." "Great," Jenna replied, scribbling down notes. "That gives us a tangible start. But to be effective, we need to pinpoint whom we want to reach and how we want to frame our narrative. What are the key issues we need to address as we do this?" "Awareness is crucial," Dan interjected, his tone softer now, less antagonistic. "But it's not enough to expose the issues. It's about empowering others to confront them. Perhaps we could launch workshops that offer tools for dialogue and self-examination." Jenna felt a knot untangling within her. The potential of this circle was blossoming, revealing paths she hadn't considered. Yet, With every rising idea came the awareness of her own limitations. As much as she absorbed their ideas, did she possess the skill to mold these concepts into reality? The apprehension tickled her gut but propelled her forward. "Workshops sound brilliant," she agreed, "but I need help. I'm not a facilitator by nature. We each have strengths. I'll need help organizing these sessions." The admission felt humbling, a crack in the armor she had built around her sense of leadership. "Why don't we form small teams?" Lisa chimed in. "Each can tackle a different aspect: outreach, logistics, workshop content. We'll gather together regularly to share progress and keep each other accountable." Jenna's heart raced with renewed hope. The collective brainstorming now buzzed with clarity and a sense of shared responsibility. This was more than just her vision. It was a tapestry woven from many threads, with each participant contributing their strength. Yet the burgeoning excitement was tempered with an imperative. Execution demanded vigilance and continuous commitment. What if the inevitable roadblocks awaited them just out of sight? Time slipped through fingers like sand. Actions required urgency for uncertain futures. Jenna felt her thoughts circling back to Dan's challenge, and her internal walls of self-doubt began to ratchet up again. She reminded herself of the vulnerability she had embraced earlier. It was okay not to have all the answers, but that didn't obviate the need for a plan. As ideas continued to fly, Jenna's mind played with the possibility. If they could succeed in mobilizing, what ripples of change could branch out from these initial efforts? The thought invigorated her, yet it was laced with trepidation. Each ripple could either propel them forward or wash them back. Sparks of resolve flickered amid the tension. There was purpose beyond mere words. It demanded action, commitment, and courage. As Jenna leered at the arrangements being planned, a new question churned within her, looming ominously. Were they truly ready for the scrutiny of success, or the blistering fear of failure? As she caught Dan's eye, he raised an eyebrow, and a flicker of intrigue danced across his features. Maybe he was beginning to grasp the earnestness of their aspirations, or perhaps he retained his skepticism. Either way, it forced Jenna to reflect on the journey ahead, one that required more than merely confronting external skeptics. It meant confronting the uncertainties within. The session began winding down, but the urgency for clear action staked itself in Jenna's mind. Could they fully commit to this? Would they march forward, blazing trails into uncertain territories? The air crackled with an unchained potential. Jenna knew the path was precarious, but one thing was clear. She would have to challenge both her leadership and her ability to surpass the chains of doubt before them. As the group dispersed, the worries bubbled and mingled with hope, igniting the question that hung suspended between them like an invisible thread. Would they be enough to make this transformative leap, or would Dan's skepticism win out in the end? Jenna held her breath, awaiting the unfurling of this new chapter. Jenna awoke disoriented, the remnants of a restless night weighing heavily on her mind. Exhaustion lingered like a specter as she braced herself for the day ahead. The chaos of ideas from the previous meeting replayed like a movie reel, the images both exhilarating and unnerving. She lingered over the gravity of her commitments, each one feeling heavier than the last. Could she genuinely uphold the expectations she had ignited? As the morning light slipped through her window, illuminating the stacks of paper on her desk, Jenna's resolve steeled. She needed a plan, an actionable framework to transform her vision into tangible steps. The workshops would be their keystone, but the logistics felt daunting. Would others step up in meaningful ways, or had she just stirred the pot aimlessly? With a deep breath, Jenna penned out her thoughts, listing out the immediate tasks she needed to address. The outreach team, workshop content, logistics. Each line articulated a level of vulnerability, a reminder of her scattered experience. It was both a starting point and a mirror, the gaps evident. Staring at the notepad, she felt a pulse of urgency propel her to the next level, a driving force begging her to lean into discomfort. Focus on your strengths, she told herself, a mantra she'd often ignored. What did she bring to the table? Passion, creativity, the ability to unite disparate voices. Yet she hesitated. Those were mere tools, not a blueprint. Would people follow her lead, or would they merely see her as a misguided enthusiast? Determined, she hopped into her car and drove across town to meet her team. The soft hum of the engine drowned out her inner voice, allowing her thoughts to swirling freely. What if failure waited around the corner, ready to pounce? Each crack in her confidence morphed into a mantra of what-ifs, threatening the fragile growth she hoped to cultivate. As Jenna strode into the cafe where they had agreed to meet, she was confronted by the familiar sight of her colleagues. Their faces glimmered with excitement, but among them, one caught her gaze: Dan. His skepticism hovered around him like an electric cloud, an unspoken challenge that swirled with potential for conflict. "Hey Jenna, ready to get this thing started?" Lisa broke through the tension, embodying the optimism Jenna craved. That small burst of enthusiasm steadied her heart. "Well, we have a lot to tackle if we're going to make this work," Jenna said, her voice trembling slightly. She brushed her hair back, instinctively reclaiming control. "Let's outline our next steps clearly." As they delved into their strategies, she noticed Dan's quiet scrutiny. His brows knitted tightly as they discussed potential names for their outreach. Each term proposed brought its own baggage, a reflection of the complex issues they were attempting to unravel. "What resonates most?" Jenna asked, searching their faces for hints of discomfort or support. "Can I be honest?" Dan interjected, finally breaking his silence. "I think we're overthinking this. We need a clear, strong message before we craft identities around it. Otherwise, we're just floundering." The room fell silent. Jenna felt a flush creep up her neck. His words were a sharp jab, piquing her sense of inadequacy. The stakes were rising. Did he doubt her capability? Or was he merely pushing for clarity? "What do you propose?" she retorted, keeping her tone steady in an effort to mask her rising frustration. Dan leaned in, his expression thoughtful. "We need to resonate on a grassroots level, talk to our audience, learn from them. The workshops should not just be a transfer of knowledge, they should empower." A moment passed, tension thickening the air. Jenna's defensiveness ebbed away, replaced by a flicker of admiration. In that instant, she recognized how crucial it was to balance direction with the willingness to listen, to embrace the energy in the room while directing it efficiently. "What if we shaped each session based on the feedback we glean? Interactivity might help drive home a relatable message," Jenna suggested, this time with more conviction. "Now that's a step forward." Dan nodded, the corners of his mouth nearly lifting into a small smile. The mood shifted, an unspoken agreement bridging the gap between them. As brainstorming continued, Jenna felt the undercurrents of her insecurities rising like tides. She had taken a step, but the waves of doubt followed along. What if her doubts derailed momentum? Each suggestion felt like a test, not just of the group's ideas but of her resolve. Finally, as the meeting drew to a close, Jenna sensed the pivotal crossroads upon which they stood. The decisions made today would echo into the future. Would they propel them into a realm of possibility, or succumbing to the insecurities that plagued their ambitions? She held tightly to her notepad, the ink still fresh and the unknown looming large. As they wrapped up, the urgency of their next steps loomed before Jenna like a pendulum, swinging between potential triumph and inevitable challenges. The electric charge in the room felt palpable, brimming with possibilities. Could they find a unified direction, or would dissent and doubt tear them apart? As Jenna stepped outside, the sun now fully risen, she gazed into the horizon. With newfound clarity emerged another question, one more profound. What truths about her own leadership would come to light as they forged this path together? She took a deep breath, not sure if she was ready for the answer. Jenna stood at the threshold of her new reality, the insights from her recent meetings swirling in her mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. The past few weeks had transformed her in ways she had never anticipated. Where once stood hesitation and fear, now grew a field of strength and possibility. Her drive toward action had crystallized a vision, not just for her but for the entire community. Jenna had taken the plunge into vulnerability, rallying a diverse group of individuals who had felt alone in their struggles. They were no longer mere acquaintances. They had become collaborators, each offering pieces of their stories to weave a narrative of collective courage. At their most recent meeting, Jenna had proposed an ambitious timeline for their first workshop series. Interactive sessions designed to empower participants to confront not only their biases, but also the biases embedded in their community. The response from her team had been electrifying. They were hungry for change, prepared to roll up their sleeves and dive into the messy work of transformation. The level of enthusiasm was a stark contrast to the heavy air that had once dulled conversation at the diner. Each brainstorming session sparked ideas that glimmered with creativity, purpose, and a shared understanding of accountability. Jenna had grown adept at balancing these conversations, leveraging her passion while inviting diverse perspectives. Accountability didn't just mean listening, it meant actively engaging everyone, including skeptics like Dan, who had now become an unexpected partner in progress. As Jenna walked down Main Street toward her family-owned diner, she could feel the weight of expectation within her shift. The setting sun bathed the street in golden light, illuminating her path. There was a purpose in her stride, a newfound confidence that had solidified her resolve. The whispers of anxiety had quieted, replaced by a deep resonance of self-assurance. She was stepping into her role as a change agent, not just for herself, but for her entire community. The workshop series launched that evening drew a crowd far bigger than expected. With support from her team, Jenna had transformed her doubts into compelling materials. Each session aligned with the principles she had come to cherish. People filled the diner, exchanging stories that broke down barriers and illuminated shared experiences. Familiar faces she had once shied away from had now become allies in vulnerability. As she stood at the forefront, Jenna looked across the room. She saw Lisa, Mike, and even Dan, all actively participating in dialogues that addressed uncomfortable truths. Each voice echoed a commitment to change that felt palpable. The perception of those around her had shifted. They were no longer defensive but curious, eager to uncover the complexities that bridged their differences. Through the flow of conversation, Jenna felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. She had not just organized events, she had ignited a movement of accountability and awakening. The mix of laughter, contemplation, and intense discussions energized her to conquer every fear she had once harbored. In that moment, Jenna realized the profound truth she had unearthed. True growth stems from embracing discomfort and transforming it into dialogue. The willingness to confront those difficult issues had become the precursor to genuine change. As the evening wore on and the discussions flourished, Jenna received a message that made her heart swell with pride. The local newspaper sought to cover their initiative in their next edition, inspired by the community's response. It was a validating moment, one that proved her efforts were not in vain. She had planted seeds of change, and now they were beginning to bloom. Amidst this newfound recognition, Jenna stood tall, fortified by the unwavering support of her team, anchoring her strength in their shared mission. She understood that her identity had shifted. She was no longer confined by her fears but empowered by her transformation. Jenna had conquered the internal landscape of dread, emerging victorious across both personal and professional realms. She had proven to herself that standing for her values led not only to self-empowerment, but to collective strength. With the winds of change at her back and her community rallying alongside her, Jenna felt ready to embrace whatever was to come. Now was the moment to reflect on how far she had come, to honor the storytelling that began in the confines of her diner and blossomed into a commitment to genuine connection. Jenna's journey had become one that illuminated the path of discovery for many, affirming that change arises when courage meets accountability. You need to subscribe now to continuously follow extraordinary stories of transformation such as Jenna's. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to bolster the reach of this impactful narrative. We want to hear from you. Don't hesitate to comment below with your reactions and theories about Jenna's continuing journey. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this inspiring conclusion. Together, let's champion the stories that uplift and empower.